morning of April 13th, 2026, dawned gray and damp over Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. A light mist clung to the asphalt of Delilah Road as the first shift workers began trickling toward the ExelCare Rehabilitation Facility. The low-slung building, with its beige siding and wide windows overlooking a modest parking lot, housed elderly patients recovering from strokes, surgeries, and long illnesses. Inside, the air always carried the faint scent of antiseptic and cafeteria coffee. For Victoria Alexander, 38, it was just another Monday. Or so she thought. Victoria had been a licensed practical nurse at ExelCare for nearly 4 years. Colleagues described her as the kind of woman who remembered every patient's birthday and stayed late to hold a trembling hand when pain kept someone awake. She had a warm laugh that echoed down the hallways and a no-nonsense way of organizing the medication cart that made chaotic mornings feel manageable. At home in Minnetonka, a quiet South Jersey town about 20 minutes away, life had grown complicated. She and her husband, Brandon Alexander, 35, had been estranged for months. The separation wasn't sudden. It had been a slow unraveling marked by arguments that grew louder, silences that stretched longer, and a growing sense that the man she once loved had become someone she barely recognized. Victoria pulled her silver sedan into the parking lot a few minutes before 6. The lot was still mostly empty, just a handful of night shift cars scattered near the entrance. She yawned, rubbing the sleep from her eyes, and reached for her tote bag filled with lunch, a spare pair of scrubs, and the small notebook where she jotted patient notes. Her phone buzzed once on the passenger seat, a text from her sister checking in. But she didn't answer right away. Work first. Always work first. She never saw the dark pickup truck idling near the far end of the lot until it was too late. Brandon had arrived well before dawn. He sat behind the wheel of his truck, engine off, windows cracked just enough to let in the cool air. 2 folded pieces of paper rested on the dashboard of Victoria's car later. But in that moment, he held nothing but the steering wheel and the weight of everything he believed had been taken from him. Friends later said Brandon had always been intense, loyal to a fault, quick to anger when he felt disrespected, and deeply afraid of abandonment. Their marriage, once passionate, had soured over money troubles, his sporadic work in construction, and Victoria's growing independence. She wanted counseling. He wanted control. The final argument weeks earlier had ended with Victoria changing the locks and filing for separation. That morning, Brandon waited with the patience of someone who had already decided the ending. When Victoria's sedan turned into the lot, he shifted into drive and moved swiftly, pulling behind her and blocking her in. The maneuver was deliberate. She was trapped between his truck and the curb. He stepped out, gun tucked into his waistband, and approached her driver's side door. Victoria's heart slammed against her ribs the moment she recognized him. She locked the doors instinctively, but Brandon was faster. He yanked the handle, and when it didn't give, he smashed the window with the butt of the pistol. His glass showered across her lap. He reached in, unlocked the door, and slid into the passenger seat before she could scream. "Brandon, no," she whispered, hands shaking on the wheel. "Please. Not here." He didn't raise his voice. His tone was eerily calm, almost conversational, as if they were sitting at their kitchen table discussing bills. He placed 2 handwritten notes on the dashboard, one addressed to his family, the other to Victoria's. The ink was still fresh. Then he spoke words that would haunt every witness who later pieced together the timeline. "If I can't have you, no one will." Victoria's mind raced. She thought of her sister, her patients waiting inside, the life she had been quietly rebuilding. She begged him to let her go, to talk somewhere else, anywhere else. But Brandon only stared ahead, breathing steadily at the gun resting on his thigh. Minutes stretched. A food delivery driver for the facility's kitchen pulled up in a white van, idling nearby. He noticed the blocked sedan and the shattered glass. Concerned, he approached on foot, waving politely. "Hey, buddy, you gotta move this truck. Delivery's coming through." The interruption was Victoria's only chance. In the split second Brandon turned his head toward the driver, she threw open her door, grabbed her phone, and ran. Her sneakers slapped against the wet pavement as she sprinted toward the glass entrance doors of ExcelCare. She didn't look back. She could hear Brandon cursing behind her, the truck door slamming. "Victoria!" His shout echoed across the lot. She burst through the automatic doors, breath ragged, screaming for help. The night shift receptionist looked up in alarm. A few early patients in the lobby stirred in their wheelchairs. Victoria made it only as far as the wide corridor just inside the entrance when Brandon shoved through the doors behind her. The first shot cracked like thunder in the enclosed space. Victoria stumbled but kept moving, ducking behind a nurse's station cart. Patients screamed. Staff dove for cover. Brandon fired again and again, the gun steady in his hand. 3, 4, 5 rounds. Victoria crumpled near the threshold of the main hallway, blood spreading across her light blue scrubs. She never made it past the reception area. She never clocked in for her shift. Brandon stood over her for a moment, chest heaving. Then he turned the weapon on himself. The final shot rang out as police sirens wailed in the distance. The officers from Egg Harbor Township arrived within minutes of the first 911 call. They found chaos. Terrified patients huddled in rooms, staff performing CPR on Victoria, and Brandon lying motionless a few feet away. Victoria was pronounced dead at the scene from multiple gunshot wounds. Brandon, still breathing but critical, was rushed to AtlantiCare Regional Medical Center. He succumbed to his self-inflicted injuries early the next morning. The 2 suicide notes remained on the dashboard of Victoria's car, untouched, until investigators secured the scene. Their contents were never publicly released, but those close to the couple later speculated they contained familiar refrains of jealousy, regret, and twisted declarations of love. Authorities confirmed no protective order had been active at the time, though friends whispered about previous arguments that had escalated into shoving matches and broken dishes. Victoria had told her sister just days earlier that Brandon had been texting obsessively, alternating between apologies and threats. To understand how 2 lives converged on that damp April morning, one must go back further, back to the exact moment things changed. Victoria and Brandon met in 2015 at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue in Vineland. She was 27, fresh out of nursing school, with bright eyes and a quick wit. He was 24, working construction, broad-shouldered and charming when he wanted to be. Their courtship was whirlwind, late-night drives along the Jersey shore, weekends camping in the Pine Barrens, whispered promises under string lights. They married in a small ceremony at a local hall in 2018. For a while, it worked. Victoria's steady paycheck complemented Brandon's variable income. They bought a modest ranch-style home in Minatola and talked about starting a family. The cracks appeared gradually. Brandon lost a steady job after an injury and grew resentful of Victoria's long hours at the rehab facility. He began drinking more, staying out later, accusing her of flirting with doctors or spending too much time away from home. Victoria tried to bridge the gap, suggesting couples therapy, planning date nights, but each attempt seemed to fuel his insecurity. By late 2024, the arguments had turned physical once, a shove that sent her into the kitchen counter. She left for a week, staying with her sister, but returned after Brandon's tearful apologies and promises to change. The final fracture came in January 2026. Victoria discovered Brandon had been secretly tracking her phone location. When confronted, he exploded, smashing her old laptop and screaming that she was trying to leave him for someone else. That night, Victoria packed a bag and drove to her sister's house in nearby Hamilton. She changed the locks the next day and told Brandon through text that she needed space. His replies started civil, then turned desperate, then menacing. "I'll always find you," one message read. Victoria blocked his number on her personal phone, but kept her work line open in case of emergencies with patients. She confided in close co-workers that she was scared, but determined to move forward. She started seeing a therapist and joined a support group for women leaving difficult marriages. At Excel Care, she threw herself into her work, in staying late to train new aides and organizing a small staff potluck to lift morale after a difficult flu season. Brandon spiraled in the months that followed. He lost another job, spent days in his truck driving past her sister's house, and posted cryptic messages on social media about betrayal and lost love. Friends tried to intervene, but he pushed them away, insisting Victoria was the only one who could fix him. In the weeks leading up to April 13th, his texts to mutual acquaintances grew darker. "She's my everything," he wrote in one group chat. "Without her, there's nothing." The exact moment things changed for Brandon may have been the night Victoria filed the separation papers. Or perhaps it was earlier, when he first realized her independence threatened the version of their life he had built in his mind. Whatever the trigger, by early April he had purchased a handgun, legally through a local dealer, and begun surveilling her routine. He knew her shift started at 6. He knew the parking lot layout. He knew the delivery schedule because he had watched the facility for days. On Sunday night, April 12th, Victoria stayed up late, talking with her sister on the phone. "I feel like I'm finally breathing again," she said. "Like I can see a future that's mine." They laughed about planning a girls' trip to the beach once the paperwork was finalized. Victoria set her alarm for 4:45 a.m., kissed her sister goodnight, and went to bed hopeful. Brandon, meanwhile, sat alone in his truck outside a 24-hour diner, rereading old photos on his phone and drinking from a flask. He wrote the 2 notes by the glow of his dashboard light. One expressed love and apology to family members, and the other, addressed to Victoria, blamed her for pushing him to the edge while simultaneously claiming he couldn't live without her. He folded them carefully and placed them in his jacket pocket. Dawn broke with the promise of rain. Brandon drove to Delilah Road and positioned his truck where he could watch the entrance without being obvious. He waited nearly 2 hours, engine off, radio silent. When Victoria's sedan appeared, everything accelerated. The delivery driver, a 52-year-old father of 3 named Marcus Riley, later told police he had no idea what he had interrupted. "I just wanted him to move so I could back the van up to the kitchen door," he said in a statement. "She looked terrified when she ran past me. I'll never forget her face." Inside XL Care, the aftermath unfolded in fragments of horror and heroism. A nursing assistant named Carla Ramirez, who had worked alongside Victoria for 3 years, was the first to reach her fallen colleague. She applied pressure to the wounds while screaming for the crash cart. Patients in nearby rooms clutched their call buttons, some crying, others praying aloud. The facility's administrator locked down the building and guided first responders through the chaos. By 6:30 a.m., the parking lot was a sea of flashing lights. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the area. News vans from Philadelphia and Atlantic City began arriving, their reporters speaking in hushed tones about another tragic case of domestic violence spilling into the workplace. In the days that followed, tributes poured in for Victoria. No colleagues described her as a bright light who sang softly to dementia patients and advocated fiercely for better staffing ratios. Her family released a statement asking for privacy while urging anyone in an abusive relationship to seek help. Victoria was trying to rebuild, her sister said. She deserved safety, not this. Brandon's family remained largely silent, though one cousin spoke anonymously to a local reporter, saying he had seemed lost in recent months and had refused offers of counseling. No one claimed to have known the full extent of his plans. The investigation by the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office confirmed the sequence. Brandon blocked the vehicle, entered it, left the notes, and pursued Victoria after the delivery driver's intervention. Ballistics matched the gun to all the shots fired. No other suspects were sought. The case was ruled a murder-suicide, a heartbreakingly common classification in domestic violence tragedies. Yet numbers and facts cannot capture the human cost. Victoria Alexander never clocked in that morning. She never checked on Mr. Thompson in room 212, who always asked for extra juice with his breakfast. She never laughed with Carla over the ridiculous patient request forms, or shared her homemade banana bread in the break room. Her patients woke to a world without her steady care. Her family faced a future forever altered by violence. Brandon's final act ensured that neither of them would see another sunrise together or apart. The notes he left offered no real answers, only echoes of pain and possession. In the quiet town of Minnetonka, Victoria's sister cleared out her belongings weeks later. Among the boxes were nursing textbooks, a framed photo of the couple on their wedding day, and a small journal where Victoria had begun writing affirmations. "I am safe. I am strong. I am starting over." The pages stopped abruptly in early April. On Delilah Road, the XL Care Rehabilitation Facility reopened after a brief closure for counseling and cleanup. Staff wore purple ribbons, Victoria's favorite color in her memory. A small plaque was placed near the entrance, dedicated to her service. Patients asked about the nice nurse with the pretty smile for months afterward. Outside the parking lot returned to routine. Cars pulled in and out. Delivery vans came and went. But for those who knew the story, the space between the curb and the glass doors would always carry the echo of running footsteps, a woman's desperate flight, and the final irrevocable cracks of gunfire. Victoria Alexander was 38 years old. She was a daughter, a sister, a beloved nurse, and a woman trying to reclaim her life. On April 13th, 2026, at around 6 a.m., she arrived for work like any other day. She never made it inside. The community mourned in small, private ways. A candlelight vigil was held at a local park, where co-workers shared stories of Victoria's kindness. One aide recalled how Victoria had stayed after her shift to help a patient's granddaughter understand a medication schedule, drawing diagrams on scrap paper until the young woman felt confident. Another remembered her bringing in extra blankets during a cold snap because no one should feel chilled in their own bed. Domestic violence advocates used the tragedy to call for stronger protections, better enforcement of restraining orders, workplace safety training, and resources for men struggling with emotional regulation before crises erupt. This didn't start in the parking lot, one counselor said at a public forum. It started in the home, in the texts, in the slow erosion of boundaries. We have to see the warning signs earlier. Brandon's actions left behind questions that would never be fully answered. Why that morning? Why at her place of work where innocent bystanders, including elderly patients, could have been harmed? What final thread snapped in his mind as he sat waiting in the pre-dawn dark? Perhaps the suicide notes held clues, but authorities kept their contents private, out of respect for the families. Some speculated they revealed untreated mental health struggles, financial despair, or a delusional belief that killing Victoria would somehow preserve their bond in death. Others pointed to cultural norms around masculinity and control that discourage men from seeking help. In the end, the story is not one of mystery but of preventable loss. Victoria had taken steps towards safety. She had confided in loved ones. She had changed locks and sought support. Yet the system, stretched thin, reactive rather than proactive, could not intercept Brandon before he reached the parking lot.